My name is Arleen Peterson, and I work with the Poor Handmaids of Jesus Christ. And here in Plymouth, Indiana, we have actually a few retreat centers, and some of my co-workers are here from the Lindenwood Conference and Retreat Center. We also have our retreat center called Moon Tree Studios, and another one called the Illuminata House and Prayer. And so we just want to welcome every single one of you all here today. We had about 116 people who were registered for the conference today. And so we hope that between today and tomorrow that we just have a great time where we can actually flourish together, which is the title of our retreat. We truly want to appreciate you all for coming, for participating. Again, if you want to keep your camera on or turn it off, that's up to you. We are asking you to hold this time together as we really try to reflect on ourselves as retreat centers and what are the things and the common things that hold us all together in this retreat space. Again, we want thank you. And also, when you register for the retreat, you probably received the package in the mail. And if you didn't, we just ask that you just put your name and retreat center in the chat. We'll make sure. But in your packet, it included a wonderful piece of thread, something like that. You should have also received a beautiful, beautiful journal as a part of your packet. There was also a lovely bookmarker from the Retreat Center Collaborative, and it holds some of our core values on the back of it. And then you also got these wonderful, great coasters with some incredible sayings on the back. And then they have some beautiful artwork and pictures on the front, courtesy of the Fetzer Institute. And so again, hopefully you did receive them in the mail. If you didn't, just let us know. And we want to make sure that we do get these items out to you so that you can have them. We really want to hold this space as an opportunity for us to learn, to grow. We're going to use the time this morning in this opening to connect with one another and to also be able to introduce each other. And we're going to put ourselves in some small groups shortly so that we can do some reflection and some journaling. Let's make sure I got all that. And so, all right. Again, and you're welcome to also post in the chat, also just your name and where you're from, where you're located, just so that we at least have a little idea in terms of folks posting in the chat. And then I am going to turn it over as we're going to invite you into the space with a poem that is going to begin this kind of opening reflection for us. And I want to introduce Michelle Scheidt from Fetzer Institute, who's going to begin and talk us through with an incredible poem.
Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon from whatever parts of the planet you are joining today. It's such a joy to have the opportunity to be together. Before I move into this poem, I just want to invite us to settle into whatever space you are in a bit. Just take a few breaths at your own pace and allow yourself to just relax and settle in wherever you are. Some people are posting their geographies in the chat, which is great. So just take a quiet moment for yourself. Take those couple of breaths and feel yourself settle in to your chair or to your standing position, and just let yourself ground and take a moment of quiet just to be and to focus. And then I will share this beautiful piece by William Stafford. So let's just take a quiet moment first. The Way It Is by William Stafford. There's a thread you follow, It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. Let's just hear that one more time. The Way It Is by William Stafford. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. And I'll ask Ben to advance to the next slide with a few questions for us to begin pondering and reflecting on. What is the thread you hold on to in your work? Who is holding that thread with you? How does holding a common thread empower you to flourish together? We'll just take a few moments with these questions. Just kind of allow them to wash over you. Ben and Justine are also posting these in the chat for us. And in a minute or so, we're going to break into small groups to reflect on these questions together. So we'll just take a few moments and allow those questions to sink in for you and see what might be surfacing. And then you'll get together with just a couple other people to reflect on that together. What is the thread you hold on to in your work? Who is holding that thread with you? How does holding a common thread empower you to flourish together?
Ben, are you ready to put us in groups? Okay.
And these questions will follow us into the breakout rooms in our chat, and we'll just have about 10 minutes in our groups.
Welcome back, folks. Oh, yeah.
Was that the royal wave, Ben?
That's right. Welcome to my humble abode.
Oh, welcome back, everybody. We hope folks had enough time to get an opportunity to share your perspectives and about your thread. whether from work or personal. And I would love if we could get just a few people to maybe share a little bit, some insights from their particular thread. Go ahead. And then maybe you want to post it in the chat if that's a good place. We'd love to hear maybe one or two people just a little reflection in is about their connection.
Hi, Arleen, I can share.
Thank you.
So in our group, we had multiple threads from peace and serenity to values and productivity to justice and good relationships. Ubuntu. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Tiana can correct me. And then I'm really working towards building relationships with self and others and the world. And one of the analogies that sprung up, it was my idea, but I don't want to take credit for it, was that it seems like we're all having these different threads that we're weaving, but that they're spooling up into a larger rope. And we're all kind of going in the same direction. And we may be approaching the issues from different angles, but it seems like we're all rowing in the same direction and it's all feeding into a larger rope.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amir. Appreciate that. Someone else? Definitely posting in the chat. Love that, Michelle. The land as a thread for all of us and our ancestors.
Hi, Arleen, it's Sally. One of the threads that came up in our small group was the paradox of running a retreat center being such a lonely and isolating job when what you're doing is creating space for people to actually gather, and how this gathering is so important for us for that reason.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Sally. Appreciate that.
And one of the things that we touched on, this is Neil, conversation that we're all going to be in shortly and are already in, no doubt, is the thread of reopening and the desperate need for reconnecting and healing.
Thank you, Neil. We appreciate that. It was mentioned in a group regarding some of the threads are being ripped, but they're being mended back together. And that's where we may find ourselves as retreat centers, where things may not look the same, or they're going to look a little different as we reopen and re-invite our space in for others to enjoy. And so definitely. Well, I absolutely appreciate everyone taking time and again, use these questions as opportunities to continue to reflect back on. I do want to read the quote from one of the cards from Krista Trippett. Is this the one I'm reading? Wait, no. Parker Palmer. How about this one? Winter one. And it says, times of dormancy and deep rest are essential to all living things. And again, we're going to use this time as an opportunity for you to be in the space, to have time to reflect, and to encourage you to join us throughout the session. Don't forget to bring your journal, your string with you toward the end of the session and later today. And we again continue to invite you into this space. And then I want to turn it over to Ben.
Thank you. Thank you, Arleen. Appreciate you holding that, and to Michelle and the folks who helped to design that opening practice to get us into this space together. We're here as sort of a first tentative step into a larger conversation over the next 2 days. And I'm so grateful to all of you who registered in advance who have been in conversation as we've brought this community through the past year, to this point of reconnecting on issues of reopening, but also on our shared values and on what we want to do together at our own centers to move the world forward in the next months. This is such a formative period for us as we reopen and as we try to discern what our decisions mean, the impact that they will have when everything seems to be in flux. So I'm grateful that you've dedicated some of this time to be with us. And I wanted to give, for folks who are new, a little background to the Retreat Center collaboration so that you can feel at home in this community. And hopefully you were able to meet some people in your breakout room just a moment ago. And then I'll be introducing Oren Slozberg, who will be leading us into our first kind of collaborative exercise together as we're looking at what is retreat today. What does this word mean that seems to be constantly changing? Methods seem to be changing, even though we're all committed to the ideas behind it. So the Retreat Center collaboration, as you may know, is a group of retreat centers and allied organizations across the United States and Canada, and perhaps even swelling a little beyond that now as well, who are gathered around shared values of the power of place and space, the power of bringing people into a designed experience that allows them to go deep with each other. That's something special that retreat centers are really good at. We often talk about the fingerprint of retreat centers. What is it that makes transformation possible at retreat centers? And the power of place and space has something to do with it. That can happen online too. That space can also be designed and held in a careful and sacred way. But not only is it the power of place and space, it's also the interplay of inner and outer work, that our inner work has a direct effect on our outer work, that we aren't just retreating to get away from the world, but we're retreating to empower the work that we're doing in the world, that both sides are needed in that process. And then also the commitment that we all share to universal flourishing, which comes in so many different insights that we're all holding differently at our centers. What are we doing that's promoting universal flourishing, whether that be healing from oppression or connecting to the land and to our stewardship of the land, or creating communities of healing that are for very specific physical illness or emotional disruption and trauma. What is it that our retreat centers do that are especially designed to allow universal flourishing to take shape? That's something that brings us together across all the differences that are within this community. So I also want to highlight that this is not, we're not all coming from the same background. We don't all speak the same kinds of language. We don't have the same experiences. And that's part of our strength. That's part of what we're doing together. So I love the thread metaphor that we're working with, talking about the thread that pieces our work together in a linear fashion, that something that we hold on to, that we're moving toward and moving with. And in my role as the program manager here for the Retreat Center collaboration, I also think of myself as a network weaver. So the idea of weaving those threads together. Your thread may be a little different from mine, but the more that I learn about your thread, I see how we're connected, and I see how our work actually empowers and amplifies each other. So I want to make sure that we have that lens going as we're connecting over the next couple of days, that we may not be on the same page on some things, and that's actually great, because that helps us see something new that we didn't know we needed to learn. So I'm going to be learning right here with you. We're all knowers and learners in this space. And I'm excited to bring Oren into the conversation if he's available, if he's here.
I'm here.
Okay, he's here. Oh, it's a miracle, small miracles. I'd like to introduce Oren Slozberg. He is the executive director at Commonweal and has a long history with the RCC, including being a part of the first conversations that made the RCC possible. So Oren, I'm glad you're here and sitting down and able to speak with us. So welcome, Oren.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Arleen. Thank you, everybody, for being here. One of the joys of working in the country is that you never know how long it's going to take you to get to work. And when a giant eucalyptus falls and blocks the highway, there is nothing you can do. So I spent the last half hour really cheering on the chainsaws, and God, that was in the nick of time. And what a blessing. And it's kind of fitting to come into this group of retreat centers with that adrenaline rush, because God knows this last year sure gave us an adrenaline rush. 2020 was kind of presented a lot of new challenges and opportunities for so many of us, and we're all still struggling to understand where we are. So what we thought to do to start this retreat was to reflect back to when we started the retreat back in the old days, or pre-COVID. So in 2018, we went around different collaborative.
Oren, your video is freezing a bit.
We learned that there's almost 2,000 retreat centers in the United States, and they come in very different flavors. So where we would like to start today is to really actually understand what that is. And interestingly, I get to bring in my academic background, which my mother said, you'll never use cognitive linguistics in your life. I'm going to show her. So what we're trying to understand is what is this retreat center idea? So there's this concept in linguistics. Some of you may know George Lakoff, a wonderful writer who writes about the metaphors we live by. And he talks about what a semantic field is. So for example, when I say the word chair, you can imagine a chair, right? Usually you're all probably sitting in chairs, but some of you are sitting on pillows. Is that a chair? Some of you might be sitting on a tree stump. That could also be a chair. Some of you might have gotten stuck and you're sitting on a milk crate. It can also be a chair. These are all chairs. So in the semantic field of the word chair, there could be a lot of things. And you can go really far out. You could be the chairperson of a committee. Is that a chair? Is that a physical thing? So the word chair has a lot of different meanings to it. So the semantic field of the word chair is big. But somewhere in the middle, when we say the word chair, you probably imagine kind of like a dining room chair. You probably are imagined like at a cafe, that kind of chair. It probably has 4 legs. It probably has a seat that's slightly padded and probably has a back. That's right in the middle of the semantic field. And as you move out, it becomes more abstract. And at some point, it gets completely metaphorical, right? The seat of the divine, the chair of the divine, that's far out there. I don't know if that's a physical thing. So that would be further out in the semantic field. And your office chair, the one with all the ergonomical adjustment, that might be a little closer in. So if we were to try and think, for example, so what we actually did in 2018, we said, well, we know what chairness is. Chairness is something that maybe you sit down on, you relax on, you work on. It's something that you place certain body parts on. There's something about chair that we get. So if we were to try to think about that being the chairness, what is the retreat centeredness? And we had a certain concept in 2018. And what we want to explore is to actually go back to that conversation and kind of see what has changed and where we are right now. So with that idea, right? So if we look at retreat centeredness now through the lens of where we are sitting right now, I'm going to milk that metaphor till the end. Where we are right now, after what we've been through in the last 6 months, 18 months, 24 months, 48 months, what is retreat centeredness? What have we learned about retreat centeredness? And actually, why don't we put this in the chat? Whatever comes to mind. What is retreat centeredness? And while we're doing this, Justine is going to be capturing these ideas and putting them in a Jamboard, which we will get to later because we're going to be creating a map of a semantic field. So even if someone says, put something in the chat that you thought of, put it in again, because the more ideas that are repeated, the closer it is to the center. So we have ministry, the place for retreat is important, going deeper, safe space, escape, gathering, human connection, home for the spirit, community care, healing, get support, places to renew. Space for inner journey, support, spaciousness, place for inner work, a safe space for wellness, reflection, nature. Notice that the word space is coming up a lot. Keep coming. You can put in as many words as you want. Calmness, so the idea of a health mental space. Silence is coming up a lot. Nature is coming up again and again. Self-care and community. Calmness again, going inward and looking upward. Welcoming, respect, sacred space, peace, peacemaking, sacred space, inner space, connection, sanctuary, unexpected encounter, radical hospitality, place of formation, safety, calm, creator. Stay awake to breathe and listen inwardly, generosity. I'm starting to see themes, keep them coming in, a place to sleep. Bold action. Think about the physical nature of retreat centeredness. What is that physicality? If you were to define what your definition of like what is in the middle there. Inspiration, being fed. I don't know if that means like literally like physically eating food or being fed spiritually. Self-understanding, rewiring. I am sure Justine is not keeping up with us, but let's keep on flooding her. Nature is coming again and again. Renewal, place to connect to self, others, nature, and divine nourishment. Depth, trees, purge, deep restoration, prayer, walking in silence. There's a spiritual theme here that's coming through. There's a lot of introspection, reflection, a lot of slowing down, time to listen to self. So those are the things that are moving towards the middle of our retreat centeredness. Community, love, restoration, pause. We'll take another 2 minutes on this. Purification, transformation. What else defines a retreat center? Is it urban? Is it rural? Where is it situated? Does it matter? You know, what does it look like when you come in? What are the purposes? What is the calling that retreat center is asking? We're trying to kind of like that we get chairness. What is retreat centeredness? Renewal, getting away to be, uplift individuals, a place within and a place apart, set apart from the routine of daily stay, rural space, group, power. And now keep writing and maybe add on top of this, what have we learned because of COVID? What has changed in retreat centeredness because of COVID? So many of our spaces have been closed. Has anything changed? Is there anything about retreat centeredness that has changed? Online space is real space. Learning connection to land can be virtual. COVID moved us online. Need for reconnection, appreciation, not restricted to place. Online appreciation. The need is still real. Chance to reform, reach across time and place. Engagement. Keep them coming. Justine, I hope you can keep up with some of it. There's no way she can keep up with all of it. I see Ben nodding.
I'm amazed. This is amazing, and I cannot keep up. And that's so wonderful.
You can save the chat, by the way, later. You can download it.
Oh, we definitely will, but we wanted to create a map of all of these things, members and visitors holding threads of space together. So one of the younger faces, are there other things that COVID has taught us that we have not? Outdoor opportunities at a safe distance from others, all the more important, right? So we're saying both virtual space, but also how much more important the physical. BIPAC people like to retreat. So thinking about who is it that's showing up at our retreat centers? Access, diversity, inclusion from Jining. More geographically widespread audiences. So I don't know if you're having a chance to read this as this is zooming by us. People otherwise isolated, home to self, divine, and world. Writing relationships to self, land, ancestors, workshops and trainings, new relationships. If things come to mind, keep writing them down. And as you're looking at that, death and rebirth, thank you, Reiko. As we're looking at this, imagine like, if we were all in the same space, there'd be a big whiteboard behind me and I'd be writing down everything that you're doing. And this is what Justine is trying to do. New possibilities, hugely constrained, limited, reduced revenue streams. And I'd be writing those things down, and things that repeat themselves will move towards the middle. So it's kind of hard to grasp this in the virtual space. But some of the themes that I'm noticing is reflection, and nature were pre-COVID, but what COVID has taught us is both the virtuality of it has started to move into the center, which didn't exist before. Questions of diversity and inclusion didn't appear in the previous conversation, and now they're kind of coming into that. So if other things come up, that would be great. Justine, do we have anything that looks like a Jamboard, or is it too insane?
I am happy to share it, but I'll tell you, things are over things. It was just so abundant, these responses. So I can pop it open, but it's a doozy.
Well, let me ask you in a different way, Justine, if I can just use you as our guinea pig. Are there things that you are noticing that are repeating and kind of coming towards the center of our semantic field?
That's a great question. I wrote nature the most. I think nature, deep rest and renewal. And then later on, justice and access to healing.
Mm-hmm. And when we kind of shifted to talk about COVID and post-COVID, is there any new things that emerge into the center of our semantic field?
That's great. And Ben, maybe you pick some things up too, but the shift from place-based to space, that it's about space that we create, whether it's online or physical. I would say one that was emergent, and social connections can happen anywhere.
Right. So the idea of how we connect in the pre-COVID times, accommodation, staying overnight is what Retreat Center was around. So I remember the first time we did this, what was really in the middle was being fed, as someone said, both physically eating meals and being fed in whatever spiritual transformative way. Nature was right there in the middle, and staying overnight was key. That a lot of retreat centers, the idea of what's in the heart, remember, it doesn't have to include everything. Of course, there are day-long retreats, right? Just like you can sit on a stump and it still has some quality of chairness, but towards the middle of our semantic field was staying overnight and being in nature. You can have a retreat center in the city, but some of the things that are emerging, how retreat centeredness has shifted in the last year, is that the physical aspect is still core, but the virtual space has changed us, that the definition of space has changed. What has stayed, and I think that this is true, and if, you know, Ben and Justine, feel free to jump in, the idea of healing and reflection and transformation, they have stayed smack in the middle of it. Okay, I just felt like I was narrating a horse race.
Or being in the middle of a waterfall.
Yes. And keep them coming in. So as you're looking through the chat, and feel free to scroll throughout it, imagine this becoming physical, and things that repeat themselves are getting towards the middle of this idea of what retreat centeredness and other things as they expand. And so as we have this idea of what retreat centeredness is, what we'd like to do now is to go out into smaller groups, which Ben will assign us. With divine intervention, we will be separated into small pods in which the question is, one, to reflect on this idea of retreat centeredness and what does that mean? The other one is to think about what does this mean for us to understand where our retreat center is? You know, what does this mean for our work? So what have we learned about what retreat centeredness is, and how does this kind of impact how we see our own retreat center within that, right? So, you know, if you were a chair manufacturer, you would say, well, I'm really going to shape my chair in this way, but I'm going to start selling stumps too, because, hey, that's part of the chairness. So when we think about retreat centeredness with this kind of very broad description that we just got, what does that mean? How will this understanding of retreat center impact our work at our own retreat centers? I hope that makes sense. I hope you have an opportunity again to introduce each other, to introduce yourself to each other. Because one of the things the virtual world really doesn't do that well is that schmooze time that happens in between sessions. So the small groups are a great opportunity to go deeper, but it's also a great opportunity to get to know each other. At the same time, introductions could probably fill up the whole time. So let's keep that in mind. Let's make a short introduction, who we are, what our retreat center is, and then really ask the question of where do I see what retreat centeredness is, and what does that mean for our organization? Okay, with that, you can continue to populate the chat if things come up, and Justine will make a divine effort. She will be powerful and turn this into a semantic map, and hopefully when we come back, we'll actually have a visual of that. Thank you. Go for it, Ben.
Thank you, Oren. That was really, really fun. Perfect audience to do this with. So excited to see the results. I have groups of 4 and I think 1 or 2 groups of 3. So looking forward to spending this 20 minutes together. Does that timing still feel right, Oren?
Yes.
Okay. So we will see you back in 20 minutes. Oren and Justine, I have you in a group together to discuss.
I hope you had a good journey. People are drifting back. Ben, let me know when everybody's here.
Oh, yeah.
I believe everybody's here. We have 54. Yeah, I think we're good.
Oh, good. You know what we're going to do? Justine, can you just share that Jamboard we made? So this is an attempt to capture what we said, and ask you just take a few moments to look at this. And then with the magic function of raising your hand, which you can do right at the bottom, if you go to where it says reactions, you want to make a sign. And my question is, what do you see? What's going on here? And let it be informed from your conversations. And I'm hoping that when you do raise your hands, I will be able to capture it. Or you know what? Instead of that, just unmute yourself and answer the question, what do you see? What's going on here?
One of the things that I see is the blue box holding space together and sacred space, i.e. holding the retreat center together during a time when a lot of things are closing.
Mm-hmm.
And realizing that we do have nature, we do have a sacred space, and how important it is. I see just off to the left of the blue box the value of gathering. How important that is for each of us, that in our first group, one person mentioned about the lonely, isolating job that we have while formulating a place for other people to gather. And that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We create the climate in which people can grow.
Thank you. So what Nancy is noticing, she's talking about space, about creating the container, noticing the orange sacred space and the blue holding space together, and kind of reflecting on this is what we do. We hold space to grow together, the sacred space. Thank you. What more do we see?
It was interesting looking at this because based on our conversation and based on our center here, the green, orange, and yellow boxes remain the same. We haven't quite entered into the pink box, but the holding space together is something from the beginning that we have said. During the pandemic, it has come to practice. And it's a beautiful new space to be in. We're getting 50% new people coming. We did not close through the pandemic. So I'm really aware of the wonderfulness of the blue space and how that's informing us going forward, and I believe has kept us going thus far.
Mm-hmm. So thank you, Suzanne. So Suzanne's looking at the orange, the sacred space, the nature green space, and the yellow, which is place for inner journey, and pointing out how that was what it is, but that actually got reinforced now that you didn't go over to where the online one is. And interesting, when we did this last time, I remember how nature was very much in the middle. Thank you, Suzanne. What more can we find? What more do you see?
Hi, this is Eileen from Rockwood. In our group, we talked a lot about sort of the tension, I guess, between giving people a space to be together in person, which they really want, while at the same time keeping people safe. And because our organization has pivoted to a lot of online trainings, like how can those two modes of online and being in person be combined in a way that makes retreats more accessible and safer for everyone who's involved? I'm really summarizing here. We talked about a lot. We talked also a lot of practical considerations, like is it advisable, legal, et cetera, to require vaccines or to even ask people for their vaccine status? Is it better to put people in their own rooms rather than shared rooms? And how can we afford that? All that kind of stuff. I don't know, anybody else from that group want to speak up? What am I missing?
Thank you, Eileen. Just pulling a few things out is coming back to the online space and what is the access that it provides is something that's emerging. And I have to say, Justine and I struggle with how to place these things together because they're obviously all woven together. And that's the beauty of a semantic field, that it's really not two-dimensional, but it's complex. But we're seeing how the online space and questions of access are new questions. I'm sure that, the issue was there before, but now that the virtual world opened the doors, suddenly we're reflecting on questions of access that we didn't ask in the same way. They were there. We know who was not coming to retreat centers, but now they became visible partially because they're showing up in there's different faces in the online spaces. So what is the learning from there? And something else that Eileen mentioned is there is, Ben, maybe later you can share it. There's part of the community calls are about reopening. So these questions about vaccinations, can you ask, can you not ask, legally, morally, all those questions are actually, there's a lot of us are asking those kind of questions. And of course that changes county by county, state by state. According to the CDC, you can do anything. So thank you, Eileen. What more can we find? We'll take maybe one or two more and then I'll be turning it back to Ben.
Yeah, for myself, around the inner journey, I see a lot more density of words around inner journey and a lot more descriptors around inner journey. Is that what other people see?
Thank you, Ken. So you're pulling us to the lower left corner, the yellow sticker place for inner journey, and saying that it seems like there's a lot more there.
And related to that, one of the things that we had talked about, and I thought it was interesting that the place for inner journey had all these words on top of it, and it was hard to see for a while until someone moved it out. And one of the things that we had talked about is that when I think of retreat, it's this idea of escaping and going somewhere. And yet when it comes to this idea of an online retreat, we're asking people to create that inner space in their own homes or wherever it is that they're at, as opposed to going somewhere to experience an escape to a sacred space. But it's about setting up sacred space within their own home. And in some respects, that's hard. And yet it's an important spiritual practice for people to recognize that they don't have to go somewhere to find that sacred space and retreat. They can actually do it in their own home. And online retreats are kind of teaching people how to create sacred space in their own home. And that's a new thing, I think, for people to recognize that they can have that space for retreat, renewal, and wellness in their own space. And they don't have to go somewhere. And then they all of a sudden come back home and everything that they experience away kind of gets lost in the midst of the hustle and the bustle of the day-to-day. And so online retreats are teaching people to create that inner space in their own homes to be able to experience the wellness that they oftentimes go away for. So I thought that was interesting.
Thank you, Lauren. So you're pointing out is that there's a shift in the understanding of retreat centeredness. Before, we would think about retreating from our urban environments to the rural and country and nature environments. The online spaces, like the retreat centeredness or the retreat, could be within our own home, and all the practices and all the transformation could happen in defining that sacred space in our homes, as opposed to before that, when we were talking about sacred space, we took it for granted that we're talking about the retreat center in a different physical place. That might have shifted now. Thank you. One more person and we will
This
shift.
conversation really makes me think about, you know, the contrast or the complementarity of like the idea of the 30-day spiritual exercises in a retreat center and annotation 19, where you really learn to make a retreat over a longer period while engaged in your ordinary activities.
Mm-hmm. So kind of taking what Lawrence is saying and giving an example, like you could do a 30-day retreat. Now you could do it within your home with a daily practice. So it's fascinating to see how this is shifting. So let's hold this as we kind of move into the rest of the retreat. Thank you for that wonderful conversation. Ben, it's all yours.
Thank you. Kevin, I see your comment there in the chat. And yes, we will be posting this Jamboard to our Mighty Network. And I believe it will also be included wherever we post all the resources that come out of this retreat. I'll let Justine kind of handle that. That was a lot that was being managed and organized there. I wanted to weave together the work that we've just done exploring this meaty and convoluted topic and show how that kind of exploring and curiosity and questioning of the work that we're doing day in and day out is going to be a common thread throughout the retreat, and how our values are going to guide us through that process. So there'll be more chances for connection and conversation like we've just been doing, some more chances for internal exploration and contemplative practice, and then also some creative time today at the end of the day to close. So there's going to be various ways that we'll be kind of entering modalities, but the purpose is to continue this idea of grounding ourselves in the work we're doing as a community with various perspectives that lend a different way of seeing the work that we're doing, and doing it through the lens of our values. So I hope that this session has been productive for you, got the wheels turning, and there's going to be more ways to bring those wheels to the ground in the upcoming sessions. So I'm going to turn it over to Justine, who's going to set us up for what's coming right after this.
Thanks so much, Ben. Thanks, Oren. It was such a beautiful mess to try and hold that. And I think it speaks to the depth and dynamic space we'll be creating over the next 2 days. And as a gentle reminder, we welcome you to come and go, and we hope we see you through all of these sessions, and also know this is quite a busy time for many. It could also possibly be late at night. You have other responsibilities. And we wanted this to be a retreat in a lot of ways for rest and renewal for those who hold space for others. So as we move into our next next stage, our next session, we have 30 minutes offline. We invite you to engage in an activity of journaling or processing in the way that best suits you about what we just discussed and what values you are reflecting on, engaging in, and upholding during this past year, and how that looks into your upcoming months. So we invite that for a 30-minute journaling and reflection prompt. And then I keep saying 30 minutes because I'm not trying to do all of the time zone distinctions in this. 30 minutes, you'll join us back in this space, in this Zoom room, for, again, another session on values we share. And just for transparency's sake, that will be mostly in breakout rooms. So if you have the time to engage in smaller group work about how you're living into your values for those who love and care and tend to retreat centers, that will be for about 45 minutes. We'll be engaged in that topic. If you have any questions, as Ben has said, please direct message Ben or I, and we'll also put our emails into if that's a better way for you to connect for accessibility. And please keep adding and engaging, and I'm going to send it back to Ben.
I see a question here from Nancy. Do we stay on the Zoom program? We're actually going to encourage folks to turn Zoom off. I think it will just be an intentional break to actually get a drink of water and step away from the screen. And I'm going to be recording each session individually and then starting a new recording for the next session. So I'm going to turn it off as well. So just log back in. It'll be the same link each time. So it should be easy for you to jump back in. Hopefully that answers your questions. Justine, anything else that we need to cover before we move into journaling?
Oh, I'm shaking my head. There's many screens. No, there's not. So enjoy that time as a gift to yourself, and we'll see you in 30 minutes.
All right, take care. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this conversation.